So I'm going to open a work session on House Bill 5016. You want to take us through that one, please?
Thank you, Co-Chair, members of the subcommittee. House Bill 5016 is the legislative branch budget. The materials are posted on OLIS that I'll be going through. Legislative Fiscal Office recommends a 25-27 total funds budget of $275.8 million, 610 positions, 498.5 FTE. This includes 7 legislative branch agencies. This recommended budget represents a slight overall decrease from the 25-27 current service level budget. There are some recommended packages that I'll get through. There are a number of motions that we need to do when we're doing budgets, so I'll try and move through this as quickly as possible because I know we have a very full agenda. Some of the general fund investments include costs related to reopening the Capitol for the 2026 legislative session. Net increase of 12 positions to address workloads in various agencies, legislative admin, fiscal, legislative policy and research office, and legislative assembly. There's one-time funding for a third party to evaluate a staffing model for member offices, and there's reductions to services and supplies budgets to recognize the use of general fund reversions to pay for the recommended funding increases. So the legislative branch and the judicial branch are a little bit unique in that they don't automatically revert their general fund at the end of a biennium. So there are some fund shifts that can happen within these budgets to pay for additional investments, which is why you see the general fund, CSL, and the recommendation at the same number. And then one more thing to point out, that these ledge branch agencies don't necessarily develop their POPs in the typical fashion that executive branch agency would. So you'll see every package is an 801 package, an LFO analyst package, but these did come through development by working with the individual agencies. So I'm going to be working from the work session report on OLIS. It's a very large document. I'll try and work through it quickly. It covers all 7 branches and their divisions within them. So the first one is legislative administration. This is a total funds budget of $120.9 million, 87 positions. Within that is $118.3 million of general fund, $2 million other funds, and $480,000 other funds non-limited. So going to the next one is the first division, administration, $7.2 million total funds, $6.8 million of general fund. There are some other funds in there as well. There is a package for administration. I'm on page 3 on that document. Package 801 includes a reduction of $6.6 million of general fund. This is the reversions that I talked about being used to fund other activities. So it's a fund shift. The costs associated with other packages in the legislative administration budget are funded out of administration. And then there's also an additional $1 million taken out of administration to fund a package in legislative policy and research office. So overall, there's a net zero impact to the branch budget, but you'll see some negatives and positives throughout. One more thing in this package, it includes $325,000 of other funds. This is to cover anticipated capital foundation projects in the 25-27 biennium. Formerly, the Capital Foundation was a division within legislative administration, but House Bill 2269 eliminates the funds and transfers the money to the Capital Foundation itself rather than working through legislative admin. So this covers those additional projects that are still expected to come through, just come through in a different way. And then one more piece, $51,000 of other funds and $1,000 for the Capital History Gateway Fund and $1,000 for the Oregon State Capital Foundation Operating Fund are included here because there are a couple projects that need to finish right before those funds are transferred out and House Bill 2269 takes effect. The next division within Ledge Admin is Security Services. This is a $13.8 million general fund budget, 2 positions. There is a package for Security Services. It includes $5 million of general fund. This includes $4.6 million for a security contract for personnel, scanners, and equipment at 12 exit and/or entry points throughout the Capitol. They'll have varying levels of security. This is anticipation of the Capitol fully being open for the 26th session and beyond. This also includes a 24/7 rover that can activate any entry point as necessary. There is a reclassification included in here of the existing facilities position to the Security Services Manager to oversee this contract. It's a total increase of $158,000 of general fund, and then it establishes an existing limited duration position as permanent as part of that security team. The next one is Information Services. This is a $19.8 million general fund budget, $21 million total funds, 40 positions. There is a package in this division as well for information services. This includes $423,042 of general fund to support 3 positions, 2 media-only specialists, 2 session-only, session-only media specialists, and then a limited duration IT project manager to lead the OLST replacement project, which is expected to go through 2029. Next is facility services. This is a $10.4 million total funds budget, $9.8 million of general fund, 23 positions. There are no packages for facility services. Employee services is the same, $3.7 million general fund, 8 positions, no packages. Financial services, $62.7 million general fund, no positions. You'll see this is a very large number. That's because a lot of the CAM's general fund financing moves through financial services as they handle those bills.
Okay.
Visitor services, there is a package here. This is a $2 million budget in total funds for visitor services, $1.6 million of general fund, 6 positions. This package includes a fund shift of half of the position cost for the capital store coordinator from other funds to general fund. It had been supported mostly with other funds, but that shift is necessary as the declining revenues from the capital store while the capital has been under construction. So hopefully in the future this could get shifted back, but right now to retain the position we want to shift it to general fund.
Okay.
You'll see a net 0 there. The last one in Ledge Admin, excuse me, is the Oregon State Capital Foundation. You'll see this is taking this down to 0 because this will no longer exist as it is, and then the $325,000 is in the Ledge Admin section where they will handle the projects through there.
Makes sense.
So this is a reduction of $325,000. Next is the Legislative Assembly budget. This is an $82.4 million general fund, $82.7 million total funds, 335 positions, 254.44 FTE. There are a little bit of other funds and non-limited other funds in this budget as well. For the interim budget, it's $36 million of general fund. There are no packages for the interim budget. That covers the 18 months. Session budget in here is the next one. That covers the long session. The short session is still part of the interim budget in these numbers. Next is the session budget, $19.1 million general fund, 90 positions, 67.5 FTE, no packages. Biennial Senate is next, $8.9 million of general fund, a slight bit of other funds in there, 28 positions. There is a package in the Biennial Senate for $126,752 total general fund. This supports 2 session-only positions that anticipates the fully open Senate chamber beginning the 26th session. So these positions did exist before the CAMS project, the Senate chamber receptionist, and then a Senate chamber page for that north side aisle. And then additionally, there is a $20,000 general fund, one-time investment here for the cost of a IT project, historical visualization data project for the chambers. So this is actually a $40,000 total cost, but it's split between Biennial Senate and Biennial House. So you'll see the same amount go in that next package for Biennial House. Biennial House, $9.4 million total funds, $9.4 million of general fund, a little bit of other funds in there. And then you have the same package from Biennial Senate with the $20,000 of general fund for that historical visualization data project. Next is the Biennial Assembly. This is a $7 million general fund, a total funds budget, $6.9 million general fund. There is one package in here. This is a reduction to support those other packages that were in the other divisions. So that reduction is taken out of Biennial Assembly to cover the costs and the other investments that we talked about. The last division in this in Legislative Assembly branch budget is the Legislative Equity Office. This is a $2.2 million general fund, 2 positions. There are no packages for that one. Next, we go to Legislative Council. This is a $25.9 million total funds budget, $22.5 million general fund, 2.7 million other funds, and then there's some other funds non-limited, 65 positions, 58.58 FTE. The first division in Legislative Council is General Program. This one does have a package, $24 million total funds, $22.5 million general fund. This package includes $1.1 million total funds to increase personal services expenditures from a compensation plan changes that are based on a market salary compensation review that occurred after development of this 25-27 budget. So it's not in CSL. So additional $1.1 million of general fund, and then a little bit of other funds is here But the general fund, again, is able to be funded with anticipated reversion. So you'll see a $0 amount in that line, but just the other funds. There are two more divisions in Legislative Council. Neither one of them have packages. The first is the Publications Division. That's funded with other funds and then also non-limited. And then Legislative Publications is all non-limited funds. Next, we have the Legislative Fiscal Officer. This is a $16.2 million total funds budget, $10.4 million of general fund, $5.8 million other funds, 28 positions. There is a package for Legislative Fiscal that's within the general program. There's only one division in Legislative Fiscal. So that package includes $250,079 of general fund. It supports a permanent full-time publications editor position, and then it supports a reclassification of an existing position to reflect current workload. So the total package is $252,633, able to be supported through the reversion, so you see a net zero other than the position add. Next is the Legislative Policy and Research Committee, $24 million general fund budget, 84 positions. Within that division, that agency, there are a number of divisions. The first one is admin, no packages for that, $4.6 million general fund. Next is Policy and Research Analyst, $12.6 million general fund, 31 positions. This does have LFO package. It includes $933,662 general fund to support 3 permanent full-time positions, Principal Legislative Analyst, Principal Research Analyst, and a Legislative Analyst, due to increased volume and complexity of research and staffing requests. This is going to be partially funded with reversions in this agency, but they don't have as much, so that's why you see that big number coming from Leg Admin in the very beginning to help cover the costs in LPRO. This package also provides $150,000 for the Legislative Policy and Research Office to enter into a professional services contract with a third party to evaluate a staffing model for member offices that compares staffing models from similar states and considers legislative members' workload related to committee assignments and leadership responsibilities, staffing levels during session and the interim, compensation structures, and individual members' budgets. This funding is provided on a one-time basis with a final report to legislative leadership expected in January 2026. Next is Committee Administration. This is a $2.6 million general fund budget, 11 positions. There are no packages. And then Session Staff, $1.6 million general fund, 27 positions, no packages here. And then lastly, we have Language Access. This is a $2.5 million general fund budget, 7 positions. There is a package for this one that adds $237,534 of general fund to support 2 additional positions, a Language Access Administrative Assistant to help with scheduling the various interpretation services that are required both during session and interim meetings, and then a Spanish language interpreter to provide interpretive services during session, so adding another staff there. The next one is the Legislative Revenue Office. This is a $4.7 million general fund budget, 8 positions. There are no packages for this agency. I'm skipping ahead to the Commission on Indian Services. This is a $1.4 million general fund budget. There is a little bit of other funds in there. 3 positions. There is a package for the commission. They only have 1 division, which is general program. The package increases their total cost by $10,000 of general fund for additional travel for the state anthropologist position that was approved a couple of sessions ago. This position is frequently being called out to look at on-site, look at things on-site to help with analysis and interpretation of those artifacts as they're discovered.
Wow.
So that was very
That's
fast.
a lot.
LFO moves recommendation House Bill 5016.
Okay, Mr. Co-Chair, you ready for a
Co-Chair,
motion?
I need a motion, please.
I move the LFO recommendation to House Bill 5016.
Colleagues, you heard the motion to move the LFO recommendation of House Bill 5016. Is there any discussion? Senator McLean.
One moment. I understand there is an amendment.
the amendment, we'll take a motion. It's not on this one. It's like 4 more down.
Okay.
Okay,
I thought it was the appropriate time to move the amendment.
it's not quite yet. I will take the amendment, though. Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, is there any objection? So moved.
Next, we have the key performance measures. There is only one change to the key performance measures, and that's the addition of the customer service key performance measure that other legislative branch agencies have that are in statute, and so we're adding that to the Legislative Equity Office, because that office did not have any KPMs at all, and as a statutory office, it has now the same ones that the other ones have, so that's the only recommended change.
You ready for a motion?
I am.
I move the LFO recommendation on the key performance measures for House Bill 5016.
Colleagues, you heard the motion to move the LFO recommendation on key performance measures. Is there any discussion? Is there any opposition? So moved.
Co-Chair, LFO recommends a budget of $263,705,733 of general fund, $10,762,723 other funds, $1,359,634 other funds non-limited, and 610 positions, 498.5 FTE, which is reflected in the -6 amendment.
Mr. Co-Chair, you ready?
Sure.
I move the adoption of the -6 amendment to House Bill 5016.
Is there any discussion? That'd be the next motion. Is there any opposition? So moved. Senator McLean.
Well, Mr. Chair, I just saw that there were amendments it looked like Representative Tran had put in, and I'm, due to the late arrival of this information yesterday, I'm trying to discern which one of these amendments, maybe staff can tell me, that are listed to House Bill 5016 is to fund a second staff person for members of the Assembly.
I think both of them do, but one does at a different level than another. Do you have more information?
Co-Chair, members of the subcommittee, let me double check what I'm looking at, but one of them, the -1 amendment would fund the LA2, I believe, for full-time for the entire biennium, and the -5, I'm trying to remember.
It's part-time.
Yeah, it's part-time for part of it, and it does add a couple of months full-time, and then it adds the LA2 for part-time for the rest. And I can't remember the exact breakout, but it does, as you can see, it does increase that staffing.
All right, well, Mr. Chair, I don't have adequate information based upon that statement to know which one to move, but I intend to move the version that would allow our second staff who serves full-time during the session to maintain their job when we're not in session.
Be the -1, wouldn't it?
I think it's the dash.
I believe that would be the -1.
That'd be the full-time, I mean, throughout the biennium.
That is the -1?
Hold on. I believe so.
All right, I haven't talked to any members of this committee about it. Maybe you intend to do it, and I'm out of order. I just, again,
Well, are you going to make a motion?
I
or-
move -1.
Okay, colleagues, you heard a motion about moving the -1. Representative Smith?
Thank you. Let me share my comment, then it'll make sense. Maybe. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I have a a fun hobby I do on the weekends, and that is I look up synonyms and antonyms to words. And so with that said, I want this committee to know we had an in fine fettle conversation about this issue in your general government subcommittee. There was banter both ways as to how best to proceed. What I would share as the co-chair of the general government subcommittee that has worked this budget significantly, my job is to be a soldier and to pass budgets. And the co-chairs of the Joint Committee on Ways and Means spent a significant amount of time, not only with myself, but my Senate co-chair and with the committee, working through how best to proceed. And there was no doubt that we wanted to continue the conversation of staffing, but we also wanted to make sure we were prudent with taxpayer dollars. And so the recommendation that your general government subcommittee co-chairs came up with was, let's take a look at this during the interim. Let's determine what the true demand is, and then come back to the public with a persuasive argument as to why we do need these additional positions. One of the things that was observed by all is the fact the legislature regularly puts additional funds into the executive branch. We work to assist the judicial branch, and yet we tend to ignore our own needs. And those who were part of that conversation all agreed with that. The question was, though, who needs additional staffing? I think back, and I don't mean any disrespect to freshman members or those members who perhaps have limited activity in the building, but I think back as a freshman, I didn't have a tremendous amount of work to do in the interim. Now, I created work, but that's the nature of my office. But then we also acknowledge that committee chairs have additional responsibilities. Vice chairs have additional responsibilities. Members who tend to be much, much more active in the interim than others may need additional staffing. And so at the end of the day, what your general government subcommittee accepted was, let's have a conversation in the interim. Let's take a look at what staffing truly should look like and come back in February with a recommendation. And so I apologize for the long conversation, but this has been an extensive conversation in general government. And at the end, the recommendation was, again, let's take a look at it and let's address this in February once we have a full understanding of what the true need is, the true cost is, et cetera.
Any more discussion? Go ahead.
Yeah, I know we have
Senator
a busy agenda. We're still on the first item, but I want to thank the co-chair. I also want to thank my colleague for his passion and support for our legislative staff. I might be the only one now. I believe that Representative Drazen was a chief of staff when I was just a lowly legislative aide in this building. As my children like to say, Father, tell me stories of the 1900s. She had a big fancy title, but I was just one of these legislative aides up on the back dark corner on the fourth floor back there. And
Hey, that's where my office is.
yeah, well, got to be careful. And we used to work the legislative session. You had a halftime that would come during the session, and then in the interim, we called it the 1122. You made $1,122 a month in order to get health care, and then you had to go out and hustle work outside. I worked at Borders Books, I helped on campaigns, things like that. I think we've acknowledged over the years that we are in the transition between becoming a very citizen legislature to annual legislative sessions. We saw what the voters did in 2010. I think it's also important, I think this committee did really good work landing a data-informed decision-making process going forward. Do we know, based on states of similar size with legislative compensation as well, how are we actually funding the support that we need for the people that are supporting us? And so I think that this is a really creative solution. I also think having additional resources to get external so that there isn't any perception that somehow we're putting our finger on the scale. Let's go outside. Let's do a systematic review. Let's look at other states. Let's look at our staffing needs. Let's do a deep dive and then come back with a recommendation to the legislature. Last thing I'll say is, I think we're all aware there's very uncertain budget times right now in the world and with what's happening with the federal government. So I think that this is very prudent to be doing this work right now and to be thinking about how we're making systemic and having very systemic conversations about what we need in terms of our staffing. So I appreciate the way that the General Government Subcommittee came forward with the recommendation as far as what we see before us today, and I will be voting no on the motion to adopt that amendment, and I'll be voting yes on the budget. So thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair.
Representative Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I was drawn in. I wasn't going to say anything. But technically, I was never in LA, so I didn't go through that process. I always worked in leadership offices. And so that on again, off again wasn't something I endured. But certainly my friends did at that time, and those were difficult times to engage and be a part of your legislative process and bring people in and then up and keep the great staffers and the people that make this building run. And I just want to put something on the record for today as the Republican leader in my current position, and that is that depending on how this all works out, the distinct possibility for people in the minority is it can be crafted in a way that further enhances and strengthens the work of the majority and further weakens access of the minority members to be able to balance out voices and engage fully. So I would just like to flag as a concern, whatever we do moving forward, I would hope that it wouldn't pick winners and losers, and that people would be able to uniformly make determinations for how to best serve their districts, and that we wouldn't presuppose the extent to which they need additional staff on behalf of their communities. So I really deeply appreciate the effort to move towards continuing to increase professionalism within the legislative branch. From the days of meeting at 1 and 2 in the morning and helter-skelter to set hours and set quarterly meetings, and all of the ways that this process in this building has grown and matured over time, I think are very important. But I also think that if this is going to be durable and if it's going to provide long-term benefit, that as we approach this issue, we should do it in a way that is thoughtful and can garner bipartisan support across the board. So thank you for this conversation today.
Any other discussion? Senator McLean.
I'll support the amendment. I appreciate colleagues who have expressed to me the desire for the session staff who work hard not to be laid off, but to continue to work. We are in difficult budget times, which is why we need additional staff, because we can make inquiries of the executive branch and we can be stonewalled. Another way to say that is it could take an incredible amount of time for information to be given to us. Not as much when we ask the questions of judicial branch. But ultimately, given the federal government's contraction of resources coming to the states over the next 10 to 15, 20 years, regardless of who the president is, we're $36.984 trillion in debt, soon to be 37. Interest on our debt is $1.2 trillion a year, 1.2 trillion a year in just interest on our debt, federally. So we could go into why there's going to be a contraction, both in the services and in what's paid by the federal government and the impact on Oregon. I may be a broken record both in this building and on podcasts about this, but what I'm trying to do is sound the alarm. Iceberg dead ahead. But unfortunately, the ship is not turning. So when we have several $billion in our general fund being appropriated in ways in which is quite shocking, given the trajectory of this financial contraction, to say we can't afford to equip the legislative branch with the tools necessary to vet information, especially the executive branch, makes me very concerned. Again, there is not just simply a JV team and then the varsity, which is the governor, the JV, which is the legislative, all wearing the same jersey. We are a separate but equal branch. And how in the heck is this separate but equal branch going to hold the executive branch accountable with its plethora of information, with its repeated delays in getting us information? At any event, I agree with Representative Tran's position. I support and urge my colleagues here to support her amendment.
Any Representative Smith?
And thank you. Just as we're doing a vote count intellectually on this dais, I really appreciate the comments from Senator McLean. I think they're extraordinarily persuasive. And I think there's a tremendous amount of wisdom in what he's sharing. I will continue to hold to the position that I have as co-chair of the General Government Subcommittee, and work diligently with leadership to bring a thoughtful concept forward that does or does not make sense, or does make sense for this body. So thank you.
Anybody else wish to weigh in? I will just briefly say that I do believe very strongly that we need to totally reevaluate the legislative branch. And that isn't just with staff. This is going to sound self-serving, but I do believe that we need to look at legislative pay for recruitment. I think what we're paid is disgraceful. I'll be retired by the time that goes through, so I think I can make that statement. I do think we have to look at the time frame that we're going to be working at. If we're going to be, the Constitution set us up that we're basically a citizen legislature, and I would prefer it to stay that way, but we're not going in that direction. So I do think we have some big questions to answer. I would agree with my colleague on my right that these are uncertain times, and we really have some tough budgets potentially coming down the road in February. Might be a better place to answer this question. So I will be a no as well. So would you please call the roll, please?
Representative Smith.
On the motion.
On the dash one.
On the dash.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
I mean, no.
Representative Nathanson.
No.
Representative Drazen.
No.
Representative Croft.
No.
Co-chair Nos.
No.
Senator Wagner.
No.
Senator Lieber.
No.
Senator McLean.
Yes.
Senator Frederick.
Reluctant, no.
Co-chair Gerard.
No. Motion fails.
You had a motion already on the dash six. Do you want
Yeah,
to
we
repeat
need
it?
to,
No, we got the dash, we need
we did the
the,
dash six, we need to.
we already moved the dash six, so I need the motion for the whole thing.
Okay, Co-Chair Gerard, I move House Bill 5016 as amended to the full Committee of Ways and Means with a due pass recommendation.
Okay, colleagues, you heard the motion to move House Bill 5016 as amended to the full committee with a due pass recommendation. Any discussion? Is there any opposition? Senator McLean is opposed. So moved.